And welcome to the Toku Portal podcast for Kamen Rider Saber. I am Vashu V, and joining me today is.
Hello everyone, it's Zero here.
So, as per usual, episode starts off with Castle. That is the guy I was calling Mr. Twinkles last week. God, what a useless character.
So yeah, he's really not worth anyone's time. I mean, I'm sure he's gonna have a possibly important part later on, but I'm like this show really doesn't need this character.
So I have an issue with it, with him. Mainly, it's so far in this episode. We've all watched the events that have happened for the last two episodes. The way it is described is Toma finds the book, finds the sword, and is forced into this situation. But he's not.
Yeah, I mean, forced by whom? Like, he chose to do it. Like, Blue.
He was like the initial. I will accept forced in the initial one because he did it basically to protect his friend. But beyond that, Ryunosuke literally went, "Here, give it to me. This is dangerous," and he went, "No." The moment choice was involved, it is no longer force. You are doing it of your own free will.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of the show, I would have to agree where it's like there's no coercion. Like he specifically stated, "No, I'm going to keep doing this." So that recap is wrong, or it's subtly indicating that this character is going to see things his way, which I'm like, okay, so you put in an unreliable narrator, which kind of defeats the purpose of this type of oh, we have a narrator so people tuning in won't be lost. But then I'm like, then you made this character really over the top, so it's are you trying to just fuck with the fans where it's oh, he's so cartoony, don't pay attention to this character, and then suddenly they're gonna turn out to be the mastermind, which I'm like, okay, yeah, you can do that, but it's is that really necessary in the show? The show already has 4 villains. Right?
The closest it gets to force at this point for me is he is now basically forced to be a member of the Sword of Logos. And to deal with their crap and what they're doing. Rather than just, I'm going to be the hero that just saves people because it's the right thing to do.
Right, except they haven't even asked him to do anything. So
right, he's just literally just gone off and done it anyways.
Right, so I don't know. That recap's weird. That character, it probably will lead to something, but I'm I still don't like his inclusion in this show.
Oh yeah, and I'm gonna have more gripes once we get to the end of this about him. But we get the setup for the episode, or so you think. So the new character is Kento, who used to be friends with Toma, and the girl that Toma forgot about.
Right, so that's interesting.
Had a dream about.
Yep.
And also has no manners.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting that we already have right off the bat we have a character who remembers, and he just tells everyone, it's yeah, Tomo's the kid who forgot, and then oh shit, I don't remember anybody's names.
Ryunosuke is
no the the person at the HQ
I don't know. Pixie just calls her the child princess because she reminds her of the child princess from Neverending Story.
Okay, I mean she has a name
in this show. She does, and give me a second, I can look it up.
Yeah, that's fine. So I'm yeah, at least she's oh, maybe that's why Saber chose him. I'm why? Because it has some connection to 15 years ago, maybe. I guess that's my only excuse of why this guy was chosen now, but it's like shit happened. And it's like, oh, it's the whole writer thing of like there's more going on than you know, but I'm like, of course.
Her name is Sophia.
Sophia. Okay, yeah, that's a nice name. But yeah,
Or is it?
it is
Hold
kind of
on.
nice that like we get like 3 characters introduced in this episode, and like none of them really felt forced. I mean, like
Right.
the dad character is super like kind of almost cliche, but I'm like, I think that's what they're trying to play him as, where it's like, oh, he's like so over the top that like even he knows he's over the top, and like everybody knows he's over the top. So like eventually he's gonna mellow out,
Like
right?
to me, the whole purpose for Rio, who's Kamen Rider Buster, which is who this episode actually involves, not Kento, who is Kamen Rider Espada. It has nothing to do with Kento besides this little setup and a little bit of the we're going to tell you a secret without telling you the secret thing that happens later during the conversation with him and Sophia. But to me, this whole episode is just to kind of hammer home what that stopped sentence was referring to.
Yeah, pretty much. Like this show has this weird thing where it's like it. Okay, like Fies did it too, but like Fies kind of did it in the fights where it's like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? Tune in next episode, and it's like, oh, it's like resolved like 2 minutes in, right?
Right.
But that's because that's like, oh, it's like how do you hook people in a writer show? Whereas this is like, oh shit, some dramatic plot twist is gonna happen. Then you tune in, and it's like, oh no, it's cool. Everybody's cool. Nothing major happened. I mean, that's not true. Major stuff happened, but like they don't play it off as a big deal. Um, which is interesting. Like this show's got a different vibe. Like especially like how nice like his secondary writer is. Like it's insane. Fucking everyone's nice. It's so weird for a writer show. Well, I mean like
Right.
not Kamen Rider Dad over here, but like it's his first episode. He's supposed to be kind of a dick.
Like
Right.
Rai put it best when he was watching it yesterday before the Sentai podcast. This show is very chill. It's very calm,
Yeah.
even when it gets into the meat of the episode. It's still very calm,
Right. I mean like
which,
on
to be fair, is fairly a little bit different. Get all things considered.
Yeah, it's pretty different, but I'm like, it definitely gives it a different vibe for a show, which isn't bad. And also, like, it looks like we're finally actually gonna go into a more standard writer type episode next episode, which should be fine. Like this episode definitely picked up from the first two, especially as it went along. Like the first third is not great, but then like as the episode goes on, it gets better, and like the next episode looks pretty solid, like a typical writer episode. So I guess
Like
just the first 2 episodes are kind of shit,
like
right?
the first third of this episode, it's not that it's bad. It's just it's 90% of it is just exposition
Oh yeah, that's true.
and characters changing clothes for no fucking reason. Um, so it starts with the same scene, and like I said, that picks up exactly where it left off with last episode. Then we have the opening. Then we have a monster running around town,
Right. I mean,
and Toma and Ryunosuke go to fight it, and Toma's in an entirely different outfit.
yeah, that's true. I mean, to be fair, I mean the explanation for that is like, oh, they just shot it and they forgot to check for continuity.
Well,
So
to me, here's my guess on what happened, because there's multiple ways to explain it. A, continuity department fucked up. Two, this particular part of this episode was supposed to be somewhere else in the series. Like maybe this episode was originally supposed to follow, Kento, like the opening would suggest, and then this part of the episode followed Ren, and it were there supposed to be two different episodes, and they just kind of did that with it for whatever reason. Or you have the bullshit oh, time has passed between this scene, the opening, and now. So it's like
Yeah.
it's time gap.
I mean, those are all three like possible.
I firmly believe that it was this whole entire episode was supposed to be a different episode.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that, especially because like the beginning and like the rest of it. Well, that's not true. When they go to the headquarters, nah, that's not true either. Because like that could have been later on. So it's like, yeah, you're right. Like this could have been like a 3-episode spread that they smushed into one episode.
It plays out fine. It's just that was exceedingly jarring.
Yeah, I mean,
At least to me. Like I'm not used to characters changing clothes throughout the show. Both Rider and Sentai are very, very lax when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, some shows do it, but you're right. It's pretty rare nowadays, especially
Like,
considering Bandai wants to sell you the fucking clothes.
Right.
Right.
We had Aruto was here recently. It was about the most changes that we really got. Because his outfit changed, so they wanted to sell all the little hoodies and T-shirts he wore.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the Ghost thing all over again, where it's like, oh man, like they sold a shit ton of clothes from Kamen Rider Ghost. Like, literally every single cast member had like a fucking product line. It was insane, almost.
But even so, like Ghost typically only wore the one outfit.
Oh no, he did not. Holy fuck, he did.
From at least, to be fair, it's also been a while since I've seen Ghost. But a good portion of it to me seems is the same flowery.
Yeah, it looks similar, but they're different hoodies. So they change over time. Sometimes like within an episode, but like usually like it goes like a couple episodes and then different hoodie, or like different episodes have different hoodies. So yeah, they look all pretty similar, but they're actually different. Man, the shoes are the worst part because those shoes are so fucking overpriced. It's insane. Anyway, fucking forget Bandai's premium Bandai nonsense. What I was trying to get back to is like it's interesting when like our third, I guess, primary writer, who will be like Espada, shows up, and it's like you really kind of get like all their personalities, where it's like, oh, god damn, I know no one's names.
Buster.
No. Toma's
Blades.
publicist.
Oh, May.
Yeah.
May.
Like May is totally like fucking like hitting trying to hit on like Espada, and like Espada kind of totally acknowledges it too. It's like, yeah, I look great, and then he like goes into like
just steals her fucking
eclairs, right? And then like Toma walks in, is like, this, you know what? This is what I don't like about you from when we were kids, just bossing people around. And then he takes another one. And like, then Blue still doesn't get one. I'm like, oh, that's cute. That's like a character moment.
Like it was a great moment, and there's a point in this episode that, depending on translation, I'm sure is entirely different depending on translations. So I'm gonna word it the safe way, not the way TV Nihon did for the QC. But it's an odd moment. I mean, it makes sense using generalization rather than what TV Nihon did. But like getting for like 3 episodes in, it's getting that baseline of everybody's personality so far, and in some instances, motivations for doing what they're, for being a member of the sort of Logos and whatnot. We're getting a nice baseline of characters and being able to differentiate personalities to warrant their inclusion in this Sentai team Kamen Rider.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'm like, okay, granted that they showed their personalities, the acting was still a little bit stiff. I mean, it's getting better, but it's like, yeah, they're still slightly stiff. But I'm like, it's early in the show.
It's getting better. I think with the introduction of more characters to the main section, it'll get better. Only because we'll have different nitpicks for characters, and it's like overall it'll kind of round itself out.
Yeah, there's that. Plus the other thing is like, these are young actors as they like one, they have to learn to build chemistry with their crew because production just started, so they're getting to know everyone. And two is like, yeah, these are young actors, so they just need more experience in acting. Over time, they'll get better. Like, okay, I'll be honest. Sogo from Zio, not the best actor starting out, but like halfway through that show,
he got pretty decent.
yeah, he like in the movie he's really freaking good, but like yeah, again, or like Decade in his show is like it's super fucking stiff, but like everything after Decade, like he's fine.
Everything after Decade, he's fantastic.
Right, like Scott is great. I mean, like Arto is like one of those things where it's like it happens pretty early, where it's like I think like less than 20 episodes in, he's like fully there, which is nice. But then again, like he got pretty harsh criticism because like people are like, oh, you shouldn't be the lead, or like you should like respect the vice president more and all that shit. So like Japanese culture straight up basically like forced him to be like get his shit together to prove to people that he deserved to be the main writer. So like yeah, Arto's a different case. But like yeah, it takes a couple episodes. And now we've talked about that. We never had to talk about this ever again for the show.
In terms of the joke about it being a Sentai team, I've actually looking at this further. Yeah, this is 100% a Sentai team.
But why do you think I keep calling him Blue? Like I don't give a shit.
Yeah, because Saber is red, Blades is blue, Espada is yellow, Buster is black, Kenzan is green. It is a fucking Sentai team, and the villain is purple.
Oh yeah, it's true, right? Like the villain even has his own evil Sentai team with like 4 guys, right? Or 5? Yeah, 4 or 5, whatever. So like it's the classic Sentai setup, which like it's early. The show doesn't really have its own like it hasn't shown its own personality to differentiate itself from like general tokusatsu. So it does feel definitely Sentai-esque. I mean, this episode's starting to move away from that, but like, yeah, it's still kind of there.
But speaking of the episode, we get a little bit of more world building of how things work, because the opening monster is the one he defeated from episode 1, which turns out, so long as the Altair book is completed, they can be resurrected at any time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it also makes like defeating them super important because
before the book is completed, because otherwise you're fighting an uphill battle at that point.
Right. This is kind of more of like the Bugster concept, except done, I think, a little bit better, because whereas the like Bugsters could just show up anytime because they're like viruses, like they never fully used that until like later on, where they were just like throwing early grunts because we didn't have suits. Whereas this makes a lot more sense, where it's like, oh, I can revive as long as this item's fully done, right? Like I become independent of being controlled. So it's like, yeah, if you want to fully get rid of him, like you have to take away the thing that created them, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, which is a lot more Sentai than Rider usually is, but I'm like, fuck it, at least it's a good motivation to get the damn books destroyed, right? Because usually it's like, just fight the monster and then whatever happens, right? Like, especially for how big of the cast we're gonna get, like, this kind of puts into, like, interesting perspective. Like, you could see it last episode too, where it's like you had one monster and another monster was covering for it. So it's like you can have shit like that, where it's like, okay, well, you beat the monster, but where is his book? How are you gonna?
Or you get what happens in this episode, and next episode, because this episode's a 2-parter.
Mm-hmm.
But we get the arrival of Kamen Rider Buster, who jumps in front of them in front of Ryunosuke and Toma as they're about to transform, and you get the Sentai explosion of dust.
I was gonna go with like the classic Rider.
Them on their ass.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say it's like the Rider henshin, where it's like the old school Rider henshin, where you get like the explosion.
Yeah, where it was just the explosion.
Yeah.
No
yeah,
color,
but like
just the explosion.
Yeah, right. Except like modern Rider doesn't really do that, but it's like, oh shit, it's a Showa Rider just jumped into a Heisei Rider fight. fucking better remember to watch out for those explosions.
I mean, to be fair, he's older, so yeah, it perfectly fits of him being Showa.
Yeah, which is
Um,
interesting. He's
but yeah,
got kind of that like, get out of my way, kids. You don't know what you're doing thing going
oh
on.
yeah, 100%, 100%. That is literally his personality right now. Um, but yeah, he tells him to back off. Then one hits the monster with his giant fucking sword.
Right. I mean, like, if you're gonna have a big ass sword, you better fucking learn to use it. So,
Like at least it's proper. At least in this aspect, he is properly named as in Kamen Rider Buster. For those of you who play Final Fantasy,
yeah. I was also
the
gonna
Buster
say
sword
like
was a
his.
giant ass fucking sword.
Right. That's true. I was also gonna say that like he has the sword of the earth, right? So
Yeah,
it's like, yeah,
yeah.
it's just power.
Like
Makes sense.
to me, my favorite thing about it is when he uses it. The first time he uses it, he basically does set the Shinkenger's or Samurai Shinkenger's mech finish.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
just giant fucking sword.
Yeah,
it,
that's pretty great. Um, yeah, that's honestly like there's usually when like riders use swords, they don't like do like a straight down finisher, right? Like
right.
the
It's
straight downs
usually
are usually for yeah, it's usually like a slash. The straight downs are usually for like the axe weapons, right? But like
right.
this series, this whole thing is sword, so we're not gonna get any axes.
I mean, to be fair, Deno was Momotaro's was slash then down.
Right. I mean,
But
Momotaros
yeah,
was
the oh, it's
also Momotaros
the
was also trying to fucking be. I mean, like Deno was trying to be a medley hero show, so like that's more of like a Gavan or like
right.
space sheriff reference because they all have like the energy slashes.
But then King Taro's the axe form it was the straight up down slash. So
Right. Yep.
um, but yeah, I as short as these fights were, I'm glad it wasn't Unreal Engine.
Yeah, that's what I saw too. I'm like, it looks better, but I'm like, oh, that's because they're just using After Effects and they already know how to use After Effects.
Right. But we get the point out of he's a dad to anybody who hasn't read the promos for this damn show.
Right.
And his son's name is Sora, and he takes him takes him to the battles with him.
Yeah. I mean. I love how
And when
like Toma's like, oh,
questioned,
he's like the greatest dad. As like, I don't know about this. And then like, Ryunosuke is like, what if something happens? He's like, nothing's gonna happen. It's
and
fine.
then something happens.
Right, right. And I'm like, all right, this is like the fucking Hibiki like Zangi Todoroki thing, except like you act literally brought a kid to the
Right.
battlefield, and I was like, oh man. I mean, like you fucking even like Hibiki and Asuma, like Asuma is like a high school kid, man. You know, like he can kind of take care of himself. I mean, like whenever him and his kid are running around, I'm like, oh god, this is like a Garo setup. And anybody who's watched Garo knows, like, don't have your fucking kids when you're fighting shit. Either you're gonna die or the kid's gonna get abducted. Like, don't do it, man.
Like literally, like as soon as I saw this episode, he's like, "Yeah, I'm the king of paradise." I'm like, "Your kid's about to get kidnapped." Yeah, like that is
Yeah.
100% red flag.
Oh god, yeah, it's so true. I mean, the one cool thing that happened is like he puts him on his shoulder and he like
Yeah,
de-henshins and it's like all in one shot. I'm like, oh, that's a cool moment.
like having that effect basically properly around him is fucking great.
Yeah, that was a cool
Um,
moment.
doo, 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 doo. Who
Oh,
is
his
this?
son, I bet, is not gonna be a character though. And I'm like, well, you could be saying like, well, kids aren't characters. I'm like, go fucking watch early Heisei. There's tons of kids who are okay characters, right? Like Kuga has a
Right.
kid. He's a lot younger than this, and he's a lot mopey, but like that's what his character is supposed to be, so it's fine. Like Agito has kids, they're fine. Fai is not so much. Ryuki has them every once in a while, but um, we early Heisei had kids. Like Kabuto definitely had kids. Like fucking Drake and Drake's helper. So, like that's a good character. Blade definitely, right? Like fucking most of the
Yeah.
Blade movies are centered around that kid.
Um,
Yeah, so it's like you did a thing which is cool, which is like Kamen Rider Dad, but then like I doubt the son's actually gonna be important at all, which is kind of sad because like Rider used to have decent kids.
right. I don't know. Hopefully they've figured out what the problem was here recently. Um, but
Well, I mean,
Megiddo,
like since Tokuger, they got their casting down, so I don't think this is a
oh
casting
yeah,
problem. I think this is just we're not really gonna
writing
write
issue.
this. Yeah,
Right. It's to me it's stop putting characters in just for the sake of putting in characters. Like
yeah,
it's okay for him to be Kamen Rider Dad. That's fine. If you're not going to use his son to his full potential, you don't actually have to put him in the show.
right. Like if you want to know how to write that, fucking watch some Hibiki, man. It's basically Kamen
Oh,
Rider Dad, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe the kid's gonna get used for interesting stuff. We'll see. As long as he doesn't get in the way, that's what'll be the ultimate determinant if this character is annoying or just okay.
well, so we get a little bit of interaction between. I don't know what to actually call this group because the monsters are called Megiddo.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm just gonna
But
call
so I'm
them the
just going to call
villains.
them. Yeah, either I'm not. If you hear me say villains or anti-logos,
Yeah,
it's the bad guys.
right, pretty
Um,
much.
but we get our first full, accurate introduction into, and his name is Zuos, as in zoo with three O's, because O's was a thing apparently. Us. Um,
Well, I mean, they could
and
just be trying to go with like Zeus, except like not doing it. But I was like, okay,
it's a
cool.
play on the word zoo
Yeah, it's probably that too. Makes
because
sense.
his specialty being living animals.
Right, that's what I was gonna. It's like O's with the silver
Let's
medals, the black ones.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like they're basically
Let's
the
go
O's
to
team, which I mean, the O's group is pretty freaking great. Like the Greed are probably like one of the best groups of villains we've had like ever in Rider. So like if you're gonna look for a template, that's not bad.
right. So yeah, it creates a new book, which creates a Salamander Man, and he makes puns too.
I mean, it's
So
not like the show's
that's
all that
great.
serious to begin with, so I'm like,
It's really not. Um, but yeah, then we get back to the characters' introductions of Toma basically wanting to write Ren's character into a book. So he starts praising him despite the logistics of what he's doing, taking a child into a war zone. And we get the little tidbit that his kid doesn't like books.
yeah, and then you see it's like, well, now I can kind of see where they could use this kid, where it's like, oh, him and Toma are gonna like have little moments where he learns to like books and shit, or it could just be for this two-parter. Who knows?
Right. Um, but basically, the new monster just sends a bunch of books throughout the town, and basically kidnaps individual people using whatever the hell the book landed on, i.e., benches, book bags, bike cases, and all that.
Yeah, this is actually kind of clever because it shows like how they can use their abilities, where it's like they don't have to
Right.
just activate in one giant area. It's like if they want, they can be really smart with it. So that's cool. Like again, it's doing really interesting things like lore wise.
Right.
Like it depends to be seen how well they use this.
And it also does it well in the aspect of they don't actually have to physically go to the place to fight the monster. Because all the monster's doing is transferring into that particular area into the world of wonder. Which, that's what that other realm was called, is the world of wonder. And that's all it's doing. So all they have to do is open their little portal book to the world of wonder, and there you go.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually pretty clever too. Which again,
going to
especially
the
considering
place-
no, well, I was gonna say because of the whole pandemic thing, it's like it cuts down on like having to do scene locations because like, well, if you don't have to fucking go anywhere, it's great. Just
Right.
teleport to our sound stage, right? Or
Right.
or like this random forest.
But we get a small scene that what the hell was his name again? Rio, Kamen Rider Buster, was basically his entire purpose was to go run around finding information on Caliber.
Yeah, and he has no information.
Right, because reasons, I guess.
Yeah.
But it cuts back, and they're, Toma's, I'm going to prove that books are good and fun. And Zora basically calls him a weirdo. That's what I'm going with, not with what TV Nihon said. The reaction to that to what TV Nihon put doesn't match. Whereas Sora calling him a weirdo does. Because they're just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
TV Nihon put something fairly inappropriate.
Yeah.
I don't care if that was what was actually said.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't really care. I was just gonna say it's been like half an hour. And
Right.
like, if you want to speed up, because we started half an hour late, you could probably run through this. Luckily, half of this episode is just one fight, so it's fine.
Right, and we have kind of bounced back and forth.
Yeah.
But basically, the monster's running around trying to have his king born, whatever that means. And
oh no, not time jackers again.
May decides to take the kid out, walking around and whatnot. Decides to go get him some ice cream. Book appears on a bench and he goes, "Books are fun, huh?" and opens the book.
Yeah. This is the whole like, oh, we set something up and then we look away and then shit happens. I'm like, okay, that's pretty contrived, but like believable. I mean, it's a lot better than, hey, shit, the world's fucked because you're like, oh, it's cool. He's got it handled by himself. Nice going, Fua. Right?
We do get a point where Buster again basically just calls Toma a giant disappointment.
Yeah.
And though we do get a little bit of information, apparently he was able to draw the sword from its sheath 15 years ago.
I think that's like episode 0 or whatever. I haven't really seen it.
Right, which that I think that came with one of the magazines or something for it.
Yeah, like it was released months ago before the show started, which is weird.
But we also get a small conversation between Sophia and Kento, where Kento feels that it's probably best that Toma doesn't remember. Because it's my sin to bear. At which point she goes, "That's right, Caliber is your..." and gets cut off.
Huh.
I'll give you 3 guesses considering what the fuck this episode is focused on.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Pretty sure Caliber is daddy.
Well, it could be family, but yeah, it's probably his dad. Makes
Given the fact that this episode is so focused on Rio and the dad aspect, I
also
have no reason to believe otherwise.
yeah, I was also gonna be like, well, if we're going by writing tropes, this is also written by the guy who wrote Ghost, and like literally everybody's dad is a character in that fucking show.
And pretty much everybody's dad was an asshole at some point too.
At some point, yeah, pretty much, right? uh, I mean, like
Both
Ghost's
of-
dad was
both of
okay,
Spectre's dad-
but like at best he was okay.
Yeah, both of Spectre's dads were assholes.
Oh god, there were.
I'm counting the movie too,
Yeah, it's true.
where it completely fucked up that entire aspect.
Yeah, like Elaine's dad is started off okay, and then he became an asshole, and then he regretted what he did.
Well, I don't think it was so much that he was an asshole. It was he was just trying to keep his world alive.
Yeah,
It wasn't so much if he was being an asshole. It is he was doing it out of necessity, and he realized that was wrong.
right. That's what I'm
So he
saying.
basically went, screw that noise, and then his snot-nosed shit dick son went, fuck you, I'm king now.
Yeah, it's basically like, well, I started this fascistic regime, and now my son's actually gonna. It's fucking. It's original Gundam with the Zabi families, where it's like, oh, like Dozle pretty much started this shit, but it's like doesn't actually. Wait, is that the right Zabi? Anyway, the point is, leader of Zabi family started this whole shit, but like halfway through the original series, he's like, well, maybe not the best fucking course of action, this thing. And then his son's like, you know what? Fuck you. You die, you're a traitor. I'm gonna rule now. Basically, like I'm the true believer, therefore I deserve to rule. Thing is like, yeah, this is what happens when you fucking like play around with being semi-fascist. You give rise to actual fascists.
Right. Yeah. So they reluctantly team up to go rescue Sora. And his dad basically goes, screw you guys, I'm gonna go off and do my own thing. I'm gonna go find my kid on my own.
Right. I also like how they don't fight because, like, again, like the most chill blue of them all, where it's like, okay, you know what? Fuck it, it's fine, man. We'll go find the kid ourselves. It's not a big deal, right?
Right.
And the monster. I'm like, he's so mellow. It's fucking insane. And then they get into the fight, and then you figure out it's like, hey,
really
yeah, like the only time he's kind of a little abrasive is like, hey, let me show you how to use combat books. It's more like in tune with me, and it's just like saying, oh, this is my gimmick, that's your gimmick.
Which yes, but I will accept it in the aspect of the way he explains it. Is it's more of this book. I have more of an affinity with this book, so it'll work better with me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
you know,
it makes sense, and like that's what I'm saying. Like at his worst, that's his most abrasive this episode, and even then, it makes perfect sense.
Right. Because Monster's slimy, so Saber tries to use Peter Pan.
Well, I mean, it does
Peter
kind of work.
Fantasia.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of.
It would have worked. It would have worked if not for Tinkerbell being an asshole.
Yeah.
This is the aspect of the point of the show where I'm like, explain to me this shit a little bit better than what it is, because that show, which I'm guessing would be just a point he can't control this one.
Yeah, it's more like he's not tactically minded enough, where it's like, like he wanted a simple, like, logical solution where it's like, this is a tool. You can't just press a button to win. You're gonna have to think your way out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm guessing that's what they're implying, but it's mostly like, okay, here's two options. Use them together in creative ways to figure out how to win. And it's like, I can't really do that on the fly. You know?
Right.
Or again, it's just the show setting. Like, yeah, blue's the more combat heavy, red's the more crazy out of the box thinker, but like not directly combat focused.
But we get to build up. They swap powers, and Red powers up as well. Saber powers up as well. And they go to kick ass, and then Buster shows back up and one hits the monster again.
And it doesn't do anything twice. Which is interesting.
This is a point that's history, because this is the monster that created the books. So why didn't the world disappear? I mean, obviously it involves the next episode. And pretty sure it involves the king. So, it ends on an interesting premise of it's not just defeating the monster that does it. There's, in certain instances, there's going to be something else.
Yeah, it's a little bit like O's, where it's like each greed kind of had their own rules.
Right. So each set of monsters are going to have their own too. And it's done well enough that this episode ends up being fairly solid. All things considered.
Yeah, I would agree. Like this is pretty, like, it's not great, but it's a standard Rider episode, right? Like, it's passable.
Compared to the last two episodes, this is much better.
Agreed.
Like I think they got to the point of what they wanted. They got the characters they wanted introduced, that they needed to get introduced, and they're like, okay, now we can tell the story.
Yeah, plus they're also trying to tell a story using fights, and that's kind of, like, traditional Rider is just that. So, like, they're a lot more, like, comfortable in the setting, right? Because this is how Rider works. So it's like, of course, it's gonna feel more like Rider if we're just telling the story throughout a fight.
So there's an aspect of Buster that bothers me.
Okay, go ahead.
So when he shows back up after, going, screw you, I'm going to go find my kid on my own, he makes a list. And I quote, 1, evil bastards. 2, shall feel the earth's rage. 3, so there's no point in talking.
Yeah.
It would have been fine without the 1, 2, 3.
No, it's because his sword is for something.
Right.
So
it was just one of those, I'm like, I get the point that he did with it, but it was just, it's the 4 auspicious beasts.
Right, yeah, it's
carried in an impenetrable armor.
I agree, like, the speech could have been better, but I see what they're trying to do, where it's like, oh, it's leading up to the motif of, like, oh, my henshin thing is this.
Right.
So it's I wish it was a better speech, but it's like, yeah, I can kind of see what they're going for. But I agree, it was not a good speech.
I would have been better given the context of the episode if it being something along, 1, you stole my kid. 2,
right, that's what I was saying. Count up your sins, 3, right?
Right, and 3, don't even try to talk me out of it.
Yeah. That would have worked. That would have worked pretty damn well.
Like, I think that would have worked, which I'm...
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I wish they would have... again, like, I wish they would have actually acknowledged that they stole his fucking kid. I mean, like, he shouts about it, but, like, it's not in the countdown. You're right. It's such a wasted opportunity.
He just does his thing, Sentai henshins, and then one hits the monster. While almost taking out Saber and Blades.
Yeah,
Saber stood there like an idiot going, ooh, pretty.
Yeah, well, to be fair, like, you don't know how the attack's gonna go, so you don't know how to dodge it, especially considering like, the first one's just straight down. But then Blades is like, yeah, just duck, bro, it's gonna sweep across. So, which implies that, like, this guy always does this type of shit, and Blades is just used to it. Again, Blades, like, the nicest fucking secondary Rider.
Oh, yeah. This is the nicest one we've had in quite a while.
Right, I mean, like, Jesus Christ, man, I don't even know. He's pretty much up there as being, like, one of the nicest.
Because, I understand that this is a show where there's going to be multiple Riders introduced, so it's going to have that high Rider count. So fundamentally, the rules of which rider is going to be the asshole to start with doesn't necessarily have to fall to the secondary rider.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But it's so weird not having that.
I know what you mean, especially in like
If you
writer
go back,
versus writer shows because the secondary writer is the rival, right?
right? Like even in shows that aren't necessarily writer versus writer, they every secondary writer primarily starts off being an asshole. Um, Mock's an asshole to start with.
I mean, they're pretty much all like that. I mean, we've
Right.
sort of started moving away because, like, lately we've been like, oh, my secondary writer is like a friend of mine.
Right.
But again, like 90% of the fucking time, it's just like, oh, I don't like you, asshole. First writer, I'm gonna kick your ass, and there's your secondary, right?
Right. And a lot of it is, oh, well, I'm doing things differently because I have my own reason for doing what I'm doing, and you're in my way, so I'm going to fight you.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it's extremely contrived. It's always extremely contrived.
Well, I mean, like, stories are about conflict, and rivalries are like the simplest fucking conflicts you can have. So it's like, of course, writer versus, or not writer versus writer, just any writer stories will have that. You also have to remember that, like, Ichigo and Nigo, like in the original show, don't super get along. Like I know in the movies they just show up and they're like all buddy buddy and like perfectly in tune all the time.
Right.
But that's because they're in a crisis situation. Like day to day, they don't like agree 100% of the time. So like
Right.
the DNA for this shit has been set since like the beginning of Rider.
Since day one.
Yeah, and like Rider Man literally tries to fucking murder V3, right? Like multiple times. Before he becomes Rider Man. But yeah, that's the thing, right?
Though I firmly believe nobody has done the rivalry better than Decade and the End.
Oh, that's pretty good. I was gonna say,
That was one of the best rivalries, not because of the fact that it was we hate each other, but we've grown to care for each other.
yeah,
It's one of
no,
those, like no, they stay assholes to each other the entire show.
right. It takes like the whole show for them to be like, all right, I don't actually hate you, but we're not exactly the best of friends, you
Right,
know?
because even after the show, he's like, "No, I'm still gonna go do my thing, get in my way. I don't care." It's like even when he showed up in Zio, Dean basically went,
Yeah.
"Screw you, Decade. I'm gonna go do my own thing." Oh crap! Look, you went got yourself powerless.
Yeah,
Sucks to be you, doesn't it?
does it? I know, right? They have such a fucking fun dynamic in the movies.
Like, but like that's one of the aspects that I think I'm gonna miss with this show is that main writer, secondary writer coming together.
Well, I mean, we don't know. There's a lot of writers. That can always happen. It's sort of
Well, I mean specifically first and second writer because that's always been primarily the thing. So it's like I've gotten so used to having the writers who dislike each other to start with.
mhm.
One being the only two writers that there are.
Well,
But those
that's
days are
not
gone.
that's
Those
not a
days are
thing
gone now.
anymore either. Like,
Those days are gone.
yeah, like we have like three
Right.
plus writers all the time now.
Like
Right? Like the only reason we don't go to 5 is because we don't want to be a Sentai team. Right? Like that's why they only go to like 4 and they stop.
until now.
Until now. Right, right. I mean like writer versus writer series don't count, but like yeah, you're right. It's because usually they're fighting each other, not being like literally like, oh, like this is the sort of logos. We have like 4 writers and a mechanic dude who might be a writer. So like we literally have potentially like a Sentai team right here, right now.
Right. Because Kenzan hasn't been introduced yet.
That's true.
Kenzan is the only character we haven't been introduced to.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because we had Toma Ryotaro, which is Blaze. We had Kento this episode and Buster this episode. Though we
Right.
haven't seen him transform yet for Espada.
Yeah, that's true. It's
Um,
it's also because they all work for the same organization, which is pretty rare in Rider.
right. So all you're gonna get, it really is just clashing older people versus new people.
Sort of. I
Because
mean,
I
it's
do like with Rio, I do things this way. This is how it should be done. You have a different idea. You're weird.
yeah, sort of. Internally, there's that, and then like externally, it's just oh, my faction hates your faction, which is normal in Rider, but it's usually like oh, here's the main rider, and then here's the secondary rider, and they have their own reason for disliking the faction. Here, it's just like oh yeah, we're the sort of logos. We protect the book. This is the villain faction. They want the book for themselves. Fight like it's fucking Geki Ranger.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's 100%. Yeah, this is 100% a Sentai setup. The only thing is they don't have mechs yet.
yeah, so
But
far.
those are supposed to be coming, and I don't know if they're just referring to the fact that Blue can ride a friggin' lion,
I
dragon, etc.
Yeah, like I think Bandai really wants to fucking sell the mechs because like the mechs are just giant hunks of plastic and they don't move. Like the Sentai mechs, but like the Sentai mechs haven't been selling that well because like Sentai hasn't been selling that well. So I'm like Bandai, knock it off, man. Like nobody's really into mechs. Like okay, you could kind of be into mechs, but you have to like make like a like okay, if you like somehow turn your mechs into Zoids or armored cores or something, I might give a shit, but you don't because it's suitmation and that takes way too much fucking effort.
In the mechs like this, just this is it's collectible. That for me, that's all that matters to me.
That's not even
And
released in Japan, dude. That's the Hasbro
right,
one, right?
but I mean, um, it's just a letter opener
Oh, okay,
and
okay,
letter
okay.
open holder. It's literally just a statue. It's like, but that's all I really care about. I don't know, like for personal purpose, I don't give a damn. But I'm not, I'm not gonna shell out, hundreds of dollars for every different version that you release of this one damn thing.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like the Sentai thing, that's true because like Rider has a collectathon, Sentai has a collectathon, but like Sentai has the mechs. And the problem is like that shit takes up way too much space, and people don't want to deal with that crap, right?
Right.
And it's
So
not even as fun because like the belts make noises and shit.
yeah, they do.
Yeah. So it's like yeah, that's one of the other reasons why it's like Sentai is not doing great, but anyway, we're gonna be here all fucking day. It's almost like a goddamn hour. 53 minutes.
Hey, that's still much better than yesterday, and I kept my word.
Yeah.
Or than last week, and I kept my word. We're under an hour.
Yeah, I was trying to do like half an hour, but then you're like going through the episode. I'm like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, I started what I was doing. I started my end of it late, so I was trying to
It's
talk.
fine.
I was trying to talk to let it kind of run,
Yeah,
so that way
I kept interrupting.
get further ahead in my head.
Anyway,
But for me, like, I don't mind like an hour-long podcast myself, especially like me and you, because we bounce back and forth really. I feel really well. Whether or not people will listen to that, I don't know. But it's more conversation of both of our experiences through Rider that come across with it. This is why I don't mind like an hour-long podcast. But
yep.
yeah, we're into Extra Story, and next week we get a villain that doesn't look like it belongs in this show.
More shit that doesn't belong in this show.
Like not in the aspect of this doesn't look like it should be a villainous monster or anything like that. This looks the monster suit looks better off in like Shinkenger.
So
It's very similar to a Shinkenger villain. It's just painted weird.
yeah, to be fair, it's like Shinkenger is a very sword heavy Sentai, so it's like maybe they're just referencing a lot of that because sword heavy Rider show, right?
Right.
I wish they would fucking remember that Wizard exists because like, dude, really sword heavy fucking Rider show. It had really interesting suits
Oh yeah, Wizard was great.
for
It had
fights.
it had its problems, but at this point, what show hasn't?
Yeah, I was gonna say for fight, it's pretty solid. Um, the one solid thing was like you kind of see like Blue use like a special finisher. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Um, but that's about it for like the fight this episode. Like it was pretty standard. It's nice to see like the secondaries kind of get a moment for them. But otherwise,
Right.
like yeah, it's getting better. Like this show's getting better. Definitely better than the first two episodes. Not quite good, but definitely better. That's all I got.
Like, and hopefully it continues that path. I guess on that note, we'll see you guys next week. Next Tuesday for more common Machine Sentai Cure Major. And what a happy pill that show is. And more of Kamen Rider Saber. Oh yeah, sorry. One more thing I wanted to say.
Yep.
I do not need a recap of the at the end of the show of the last 5 minutes. Fuck you,
Yeah.
Tassel. I hate that. I have no problem if you want to do the opening narration or whatnot. I do not need you to cover the last 5 minutes of these episodes. I literally just watched it. You jackasses at Toei.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know why they're doing that is because like, oh, just in case somebody missed it, because like this runs on a TV channel, so like, oh,
Right.
what if nobody got back? But I'm like, come on, man, we haven't had to use this tactic like literally ever. Why start
Right.
now? I mean, you could be like, whoa, we're aiming for a lower demographic. I'm like, so is Sentai. Like, what the hell is
And
your
even
excuse?
Sentai doesn't do that.
Right, exactly. Anyway, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Hopefully this
See you guys next week.
Yeah, later.